The All Elite Wrestling TV deal is done and announced, but we get our first bump on the road to Double or Nothing. Next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing. Less than a week to go. And we're getting very close to the goal, Ralph. Very close. So everyone was wondering, the last piece of the puzzle, what's going to happen with the TV deal? Are we going to get the TV deal? Where are they going to be come October when they're on TV? We finally got that, and it's going to be on TNT. They sent out the press release Wednesday morning. They didn't say what day they're going to be on, which was a little surprising, but the press release basically saying that this is going to be an alternative. Again, we bring up that word alternative. So what do you think about the announcement of the TV deal?
Definitely exciting. Definitely can't wait to see what AEW has to offer and what type of things they're going to be doing to really make themselves stand out in comparison to the WWE or any of the other wrestling promotions for that matter. Because what they said this press release was they were going to offer an alternative to, what people have been used to for the last 20 years. So not only does that include the WWE, but you got to think that also includes Ring of Honor, Impact, MLW, New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I'm interested to see that. I'm also impressed because when you think about what AEW is, it's essentially a startup company that's going from, a startup to like competing with the WWEs of the world almost overnight. And that's impressive because there's been other companies, you think about Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan Pro Wrestling. All of those companies are much more established. They've been around longer. They have established wrestlers and contracts in place. They've been around and they've been able to distinguish themselves as a structured company, but they haven't necessarily gotten a TV deal like this on primetime.
No.
So that's impressive to me because that means the higher-ups, whether it was with, the network or whoever else they had to meet with to secure this deal, something had to be there, something that Tony Khan said or something that he presented to them convinced them that this was a worthwhile investment for them because they're not going to invest millions or billions of dollars potentially into a promotion like AEW where they've essentially done nothing. Double or Nothing is essentially their first show. So at this point, all they have is, their roster to a certain extent and some good ideas and the fact that they're going to offer an alternative to people. And I guess that was impressive enough for the network to run with.
And we don't know the full details of the TV deal as far as dollars and cents, but from what I've gathered with some of the reports, I guess what it is TNT is going to be putting in the production aspect of it. So I guess their production team will be handling the on-screen, camera work and, their production crew will be doing the TV stuff. And they're going to be splitting pretty evenly the ad revenue. So that's a pretty decent deal for not having a single show.
Yep. I think that's assuming they can secure some good revenue from advertising. So again, they have to go back to the drawing board. Double or Nothing has to be impressive. It has to launch and be successful. It has to be accepted by, a good portion of the wrestling fans.
Correct.
Who's going to want to run advertising on a show that nobody's going to watch?
Exactly. And I found this a little odd and concerning that they did not announce what night it's going to be on.
I'm not so much concerned about that. And I've heard a lot of rumors, whether it was, Tuesday, I think that was the biggest speculation just because the
trademark.
The trademark that was taken out. I've heard Wednesday, Thursday.
Right. So basically it is going to be either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Right.
We know that. The question is which of those nights? The NBA on TNT is always on Thursday. So you would assume Thursday's not going to happen. Wednesday, people have said that's the best situation for AEW because there's absolutely no basketball on Wednesdays. Maybe occasionally there's a playoff game, but nothing there.
I don't follow NBA enough.
Tuesday, the first half of the season, they're fine. Then they get to the start of the second half of the season, and then they start doing Tuesdays, and of course the NBA playoffs. Obviously, TNT has a lot of their advertising revenue come in from the NBA. So you can't just push that away for some startup wrestling promotion.
And not only that, but it's pretty much almost a scientific fact that humans are a creature of habit.
Yes.
You know, if they're used to putting on wrestling at a specific time on a specific channel, they're going to want to make sure that it's at that time on that same channel every single week, especially if it's where they're going to be presenting it weekly. Right? If you start having it on Tuesday one week and you move it over to Wednesday
or Tuesday to Friday,
while a hardcore fan, like, you know, most of us or anybody who follows our podcast, they'll go out and they'll find wherever AEW is, whatever night of the week it's on. But for the casual fan who knows that, all right, well, AEW is going to be on from 8 to 9 on a Tuesday night, they may not follow that if it's on a Wednesday or Thursday if things get moved around too much.
Yeah, that's definitely something to worry about too. And you know, you bring up Creature Habit, WWE's moving SmackDown from Tuesday to Friday. So how will their ratings affect? Because we already know the ratings are dropping. Moving to Friday could be beneficial to them because you don't have that 5 hours of, you know, back-to-back nights of wrestling. Maybe it breaks them up and it could help them. Or it could be worse because people expect Tuesday to be SmackDown and now they don't. And move that over, and now their ratings are even worse. And you know, we get that report saying that Fox wants at least 3 million viewers a week for SmackDown.
They got a lot of work to do.
That is true, but you know, it's one thing if it's cable TV as opposed to network TV. It's a much bigger situation. So, you know, it's definitely something to look into as the months to come, before we have our first show in October for All Elite Wrestling. Now, let's move over to what's happening on Saturday night. Now, for those that were following social media on Saturday, you saw that Hangman Page surprised basically the entire wrestling community, blew up social media by showing up at a WrestleGate show in Nottingham, England. And no, it was WrestlingGate.
Oh.
WrestlingGate. So PAC is the Dragon Gate champion, but this was Wrestling Gate. So PAC, who was supposed to have a triple threat match, but one of the competitors wrestled earlier in the night, and the other competitor, for some reason, could not make the show. So he issues an open challenge. Hangman Page answers. They have a match. It has a dusty finish. And after the match, PAC attacks Hangman Page, appears to have injured his ankle, kayfabe, and cuts a promo saying he's not coming to All Elite Wrestling. He's not coming to Double or Nothing. So after that comes out, we get a report from Dave Meltzer saying that, no, that wasn't a promo. That's true. He's not coming to All Elite Wrestling. The match is canceled due to creative differences. And they had this match as a make good. First bump in the road for Double or Nothing here.
Yeah, definitely not a good start or a good look for All Elite Wrestling. But it really just highlights one of the biggest concerns that I've had since the beginning of this whole talent sharing, you know, approach for AEW. While I think it's got its benefits where, you know, you can pull some of the talents from other companies and you can put on some really good shows. When it comes to creative, when it comes to egos, when it comes to money, that sounds a lot like WCW. And we know that that was one of the biggest issues with WCW, why it went under, because you had a lot of guys that were making a lot of money, that had a lot of creative control, and that they had a lot of big egos in the backstage area. And that was also the reason why a lot of the guys like your Chris Jericho's, your Eddie Guerrero's, your Benoit's, they didn't necessarily get the opportunities they felt like they were afforded. So, that being said, if this is true, and this is all speculation to this point, I know Meltzer obviously put that out there, but it hasn't been confirmed that, yes, he's not going to be there. It's just kind of speculated that he won't be there, and that it was because of creative concerns. You know, if you're AEW and you know, you're going to give these guys a certain amount of creative control, who's to say, hey, I don't like the booking, I'm just not going to do the match, or I'm just going to walk away? That's not a good look for AEW right now, especially when they haven't even had their first show. And this is probably one of the matches that people are most looking forward to.
Yeah, it definitely was one of them. And I will say that with this whole thing, and they purposely came out and said in interviews that the wrestlers are going to have more creative freedom, not necessarily control.
Yeah, freedom, control.
They're, it's the same thing as competition versus alternative. They're similar, but they're not quite the same thing.
Right.
So when you have creative freedom, it's like, okay, I could say yes or no to whatever I want. Creative freedom is they tell me to do something and I can work with it.
Yeah.
Creative control is
freelance.
Right. I'm going to do whatever I want. And it seems like PAC is using creative control on what he wants. And, this is a guy who, since he left WWE, has not lost a match.
Yep.
Well, hasn't been pinned, I should say, because technically Hangman Page won the match. And he's had time limit draws with the likes of Zack Sabre Jr. and Will Ospreay. So, but he really wants to protect his character and, more importantly, the Dragon Gate Championship.
As he should.
So, being in that situation where he's going to go to this show, Double or Nothing, and it seems like Hangman Page was going to go over if creative differences is what's stopping this match. I don't see why they couldn't do what they did at the WrestleGate show. And he's still protected. The belt's still protected.
Yep.
But, this is a guy who has not lost or has not been pinned in a singles match since Enzo Amore beat him for the Cruiserweight Championship. So, this is a guy that, if someone's going to beat him, he wants to make sure it's a worthy enough opponent. Because the last time he had someone pin him, he was an absolute joke and, he's not even wrestling anymore.
Right.
So,
well, I definitely think that Hangman would have been a worthy opponent to beat him. The problem that I think you come up against is this. When you look at the corporate structure of AEW and you look at who sits at the top, you got Cody, the Bucks,
Kenny.
They all hold these corporate titles. The problem is when you bring in these other guys from other promotions, it's going to be problematic where if you have any of those guys go over them, you're automatically going to assume, oh, well, you're having him go over because, he's a higher up in the corporate structure. It's no different than Triple H. And people have been giving Triple H shit for years. Oh, he only wins because he's Stephanie's husband, he's COO, or whatever his corporate title is. To me, that's not any different. At least to the point where you can make the argument, oh, well, let's say, for example, Kenny Omega beats Jericho. Right? Who's to say Jericho doesn't go to complain to somebody and say, oh, well, you only want him to go over because he's the, whatever his title is, right?
Executive Vice President.
Yeah. Right. So not that that's actually going to happen, but that's where you start to see where egos come in and there's issues backstage. These are the little things that can happen down the road. Now, are they going to happen? I certainly hope not because I want AEW to be successful.
Right.
But it's easy to see where these types of things can happen, especially with a guy like Neville. And when you think about how AEW has promised that wins and losses are going to matter more than anything because it's supposed to be a league. Well, if you have PAC come in and lose, what does that say about his record? That essentially says that, yes, he's a wrestler in these other promotions, but he's losing to one of our top guys in AEW. So you start to look at the structure there and the ranking. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. But if you're going to have wins and losses matter more than anything, who the hell is going to want to lose? It doesn't benefit anybody.
Right.
So
let's go back to it now with Double or Nothing. And, one of the things that people were wondering about with the pay-per-view itself is how much are they going to pay to get this pay-per-view?
Yep.
And it's $49.95 here in the US. I know in the UK, I think it's £15. You could correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. And, it's all over the world on Fight TV with, I don't know, all their different prices. But here in the United States, for a show that it is the first one ever, $49.95, and a lot of these wrestlers, not many people know. And this is one of the matches where people knew these guys, and it's getting, reportedly canceled. Do you think that price point is a little high?
I don't think it's high, but that's only because I grew up when we were paying that amount for a pay-per-view.
Right.
Now, to the younger generation, let's say a fan who's maybe 13 or 14, 15 years old, maybe they weren't paying for pay-per-views.
Mhm.
And there's obviously streaming, and like the WWE network is only $10 a month, so you're not used to paying that. I don't personally have a problem with the pay-per-view price. Um, it certainly sucks that we're not going to see Pac and Hangman Page, because that's probably one of the biggest sellers, or
What if throughout this whole thing, what if Meltzer was worked?
And that's certainly something that could be, and that goes to the point that we've talked about before. I think that there are times where they can use somebody like a Dave Meltzer to get that information out there, because they know people, people on the internet, they'll go and search for that stuff and buy into that, and they can use that as part of the storyline or use social media. But um, it's certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time Meltzer was wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong, a lot of people crap on Meltzer, but for the most part, he is pretty credible.
Of course, yeah.
So, I mean, he's been doing this since what, 1983 or something like that?
He has sources. He gets the information from his sources. If his sources are wrong, it's not his fault.
Right, exactly. It's not like someone throwing a tweet out there just 100% speculating and trying to report it as news.
Right.
So, it's very interesting how this all came about, and the promo that Pac cut, it makes me believe that it is a work, but I could totally understand if it's a shoot. It's 50-50 on me. I'm not 100% certain it is canceled or there are creative differences. I guess we just have to wait until All Elite Wrestling does something.
The hard thing is, assuming this is a creative difference, would it have really been that difficult assuming Hangman Page was going to win? Does he really lose that much by losing a match? You could have done something where he won by like a
DQ.
roll up or
DQ.
DQ's tough, because that's the thing that WWE goes to a lot that pisses people off, that they don't actually have a winner or loser. So a high profile match like that, I think that would anger a lot of the fan base. But you could have had a cheap finish where it was like a roll up, or at least leave it where it was like almost essentially like a lucky finish. But again, this is one of those matches that was talked about as, potentially being for the heavyweight championship.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very disappointing that this isn't going to go on. The only thing that I could see happen, where maybe supposing Moxley does show up there, if he steps in, that doesn't do them any favors if they don't announce it beforehand. And, that
or it could help them if he ends up being a surprise opponent, because
you get the rush of people. Yeah, that could work. Him or maybe even MJF for the winner of the Battle Royal could
right.
face them.
See, I was thinking this one of two ways, and basically the same thing you did, was seeing that the winner of the Casino Battle Royale would be a number one contender for the AEW Championship. Instead of just waiting for another show, just have them do two matches. Yeah. We saw it All In. Flip Gordon did the same thing. Yeah. The winner of the Battle Royal faced Jay Lethal for the Ring of Honor Championship. Do that same exact situation now. The problem is, if it is someone like an MJF, or say a Joey Janela, Jungle Boy, or a Brian Pillman Jr., who not many people know, does that lose the luster in this match?
Well, I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. So if you have a guy like Brian Pillman Jr. win that, or another guy who's maybe not as well known,
mm-hmm.
just simply highlighting them is going to get them the credibility that they really need. If you think back to when 1-2-3 Kid, I think at the time he was the Lightning Kid, right?
When
Sean
he beat
Waltman,
Razor.
Yeah. When he beat Razor, similar situation. He was a relatively unknown guy. He had this big win over a big name, Scott Hall at the time, Razor Ramon. It would be very similar. You could have a guy who's a relatively unknown, at least to the casual fan, go over a guy like a Hangman Page. Again, it doesn't have to be any crazy finish. It could be like a roll up. You could do it something like that, and that could start the feud.
Yeah.
And they'll get credibility from it. The one question I was going to ask you, going back to the TV deal, let's assume the TV deal, the show's not on Monday and it's not on Friday when SmackDown's going to be.
Right.
Any night during the week other than those days. If you're Vince McMahon, what do you do to ensure that people are still watching your program? I know what I would do.
Well, if it's going to be on Wednesday, you have NXT on the network. You could see if Fox Sports 1 will put NXT on Fox Sports 1.
Yep. That's exactly what well, maybe, I don't know about Fox Sports 1, but one of the quotes that I have from here from their the memo that they sent out.
Who is this? The
WWE?
Oh, AEW.
So they said that matches will be fast-paced, high-impact competitions. Sounds a lot like NXT. You know, NXT is a very different product than what you get with your traditional Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. If you're Vince and you want to make sure people are still watching some type of programming and you want to compete, put NXT on TV. You know, yes, you can get it with the subscription.
Here's the issue with that. If you're in a business sense, a lot of people subscribe to the WWE Network for NXT. Yep. If you take it off at, the WWE Network, you're going to lose a lot of subscriptions.
I don't think so. I wouldn't unsubscribe. I mean, I would keep my subscription. No matter
I think there's three main reasons why you subscribe to the WWE Network: NXT, the pay-per-views, and the catalog.
Yep.
You're not watching their linear programming that's on.
I don't.
Because it's a bunch of reruns. It's, you know, I have a lot of, you know, where I work, we deal with the WWE Network, so I know how it works. And, you know, so I would not, if I'm WWE, I would be very cautious about taking NXT off the network. If AEW is smart, I would try to avoid any night where WWE has some kind of programming. Now, WWE could easily move one of their shows, but then, like you said before, people are creatures of habit. So if it's on Wednesday and they move to Thursday or Tuesday, well, people might not like that.
My only point with that was, if AEW is going to offer these matches that are fast-paced and competitive and things of that nature, Raw and SmackDown, it's going to be the same thing.
Right.
They're not going to automatically change their style or change their approach. Some things may change once AEW takes off, depending on how successful it is, but I don't think automatically they're just going to change their approach to ring psychology and things of that nature. But if I'm Vince and I want to compete and I want to say to the fans, the fan base, whether it's the casual fan or the hardcore fan, hey, look, they're doing this style, we can do that style, and you know what? It's a hell of a lot better, assuming it is. I don't know. It's up for opinion. You know, here's our product. Here's our version of what they're doing. And then you have NXT and AEW on the same night.
Right.
Assuming Vince wants to compete and show that they are capable of doing that style as well.
Right. Well,
just a thought.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video, share it all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. Subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. We're trying to hit 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling, Double or Nothing. And in our next episode, we're making our predictions. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.